session. So in today's discussion, we'll start with the CSS layout, especially how we can handle and how we can position different elements, especially when you're laying out. Remember that especially early days, when we are laying out website, we use table structure available in HTML. But now everything is now handled mainly through CSS layout. So the first thing that we are going to see how we can use display property, and then how we can actually display the CSS, the layout, right? Now, this is called block level. When we have block level elements, when we start, we know that it starts with a new line, and also usually takes the full width available. For example, you can see the division, the div headers, paragraphs, forms, those are usually block level elements. And inline elements, which is like go together with the other elements without creating any new line, like span, as well as anchors and images. Now, one thing we discussed last time is the use of elements, and especially how to hide them. When we use display none, we use hide and show element, and without removing or recreating. But when you say visibility hidden, then usually it'll hide, but space is available. So depend on your requirement, you have to decide whether you want to use display none or visibility hidden. Now, especially the other thing is now this default element type, whether it's a block element or whether inline element, that you can actually change how it display. Now, for example, anchor A, we usually use it as an inline element, and then you can change it to block element, which takes then the new line, right? So this is also another way that you can actually handle how you want to use this. Okay, so I think we'll start from new parts, especially when you want to use position property. Now, how do you position the element? So when you talk about the positioning, we can talk about 5 different position values: static, relative, fixed, absolute, and sticky. So then we can also use different properties. For example, when you want to position using the 5 different values, you can use top, bottom, left, and right? So the first thing is we have to first set up the position property, and then it depends on how you work the position value, right? Now, for example, when we use HTML elements, the default is what we call the static. Now, when we say static positioning, it'll irrespective of whether you are using top, bottom, or left and right, it position the element, right? And normal positioning weight will be there. But if you have relative, so then it has changed the way that it is positioning. So it's relative to its normal position. So then you can actually use top, right, bottom. Using that, you can adjust how you are going to, handle this, right? Now, when you say position fixed, it's again relative to which viewpoint. What it means, it is always in the same place, right? So sometimes you might have seen there are some website where when you go down, the background stays still. The point here is that you can actually make it absolute, meaning like you can make it position is fixed. Right. Now you can see there are two div elements. You can use relative and absolute positioning. So in that particular case, when you say position absolute is position relative to the nearest position anchor, relative to the weak point like fixed. So for example, uh, first one you can see in the right hand side, we have div element, we have position is relative, and the second div element you can have position is absolute, right? So maybe we could finish this part and we'll do exercise and just try to understand how the positioning works. Then again, position sticky, that is the last one. And based on this is actually position based on how do you scroll. So that means this may change between your relative and fixed depend on the where you scroll, right? Um, so that's why it's the term called sticky is there, right? So depend on how you have to use this one. And the last one is the next thing that we need to discuss, float and clear. That means CS float property, we can use how the element should float. So we can specify where you can actually clear out. So this is useful, especially when you want to position a text and an image, for example. So depend on where you want to position an image. Now, for example, you can say you can use image float left within the text container where you can actually put the image on the left. So when you use a float property, you can use left, right, and none and inherit, depending on what you want to do. So when you say left, element goes to the left of whatever the container, like for example, in a text. And then right again, then you can, make it right. None, which means it will not float at all. This is the default behavior. Inherit, actually, you take that value from its parent, right? So here are some examples where you can try using image float left of the text and then right of the text. None is the usual behavior where you have image and how do you, it will normally, the text is around the image, and that's what you will see in the third figure. Right. Then float and clear. The clear property, we can use it to what element can float in the clear determine and in which side. And then in clear property also you can use none, left, right, both, and inherit. Again, none allows floating in both sides. Left is to the left side, right is right side. Both, depending on no floating elements are allowed in left and right side. And then inherit, actually it's going to clear values of its payment, right? So usually the clear property we use when you use a float property in an element. And then, yes, Krish?
Sorry, sir, by mistakenly.
Ah, okay. So I thought you have some question. And then when you have float, you should, match with clear to the float. Float to the left, then you should clear to the left and so on, right? Yes, I think maybe we will do a small work just like what we did in earlier, just to understand floating with the different elements. So let's go back. So I'm going to use my, like in previous, let's have a notebook environment. Let me use, okay, so I'm going to use my previous, so I will copy the code that we have used in previous one as a skeleton, and then let's try to work it on. So let me share my both the code and also the outcome. Right. So right. So I'm going to remove everything. Right now, I'm not going to have everything. I'm going to have the default version. Let me save it as CSS4. Five. Let's say put it 5. Right. Let me copy paste in the chat in case you can also try to use the same code. So here is a code for you. Let me open up the document that it actually created. So here is what I have right now. Okay, now that we have used this, let me try to use some of the ideas that we have discussed. So, for example, one thing that we have discussed earlier is the use of display. For example, now you can see we have H1 and also H2. We have CSS. Web Technologies is the one. Now you can use the hidden one. For example, now let me say uh, I'm going to within the inline style. Within that, let me put uh, H1. So we said hidden, and then within that I will say okay, display none. Right. So let me save it. Let me refresh and see the outcome. Thanks, Prasanga, letting me know the problem here. So when I say H1 hidden, I'm assuming that there's a class called hidden here, where in my code, I didn't put that. So the point here is like, I have to make sure that, okay, I have to have a class where the class should tell us what this is, right? So let me use class hidden, then let me save it. So when I refresh it, now you can see the point I want to make when you say display none. What happens is it will display and the space will not take up. But of course, if you use visibility hidden, so instead of display none, if I use visibility hidden, you can see the element is hidden. Elements is hidden, but still the space is taken up. Now, especially when you have a uh, application and we want to sometimes hide any elements and display, especially small games and all, where we want to like hide elements and then you want to make the display. So you can actually make that change, right? So that it'll the space is there, but the element is hidden. Right. That is the first thing that I want to discuss under the laying out, the use of display. The next thing that I would like to discuss is the default display value. Now, for example, the right now, my H1, for example, here, it's a block element, but you can actually, change it to, inline element. So let me try that one now. So I'm going to save it again, refresh. So it's the default. The right now we have H1. You see that it will take a new line and then there are spaces. So let's try to change, let's say H1. I'm going to say display and then I'm going to say inline. Now, inline element, we know that it won't take any spaces. So you can see now the additional spaces are the removed, right? So then it display as a inline element. Now, similarly, let's take some other element. Let me use, for example, uh, link. So let me include some link somewhere here, right? I'm going to say here a link. Let's see href test.html and then link, let's say one. Now, usually when you type something like this and when you refresh it, you can see it's an inline element. There's no spacing, not a block. And then now let's say we will take anchor, we'll take the change now the display into block element. So let's see how it works. So now you can see it actually breaks and now it acts like a block element where you have a space in between, right? So depend on your requirement. So you can decide whether you want to use inline or block or you want to change the default behavior, right? That can be changed by displaying the or changing the display property. Right. The next thing that we have discussed, okay, before that, have you finished up to this point? So in positioning elements, we can start with static elements. We can start with relative element. Um, and then we can have fixed elements. And then we can have absolute, and then finally sticky element, right? Let's try to you know what is existing. So we have a couple of paragraphs are here. So let's try to create some div elements, and then let's see whether we can you know, change this div element with the codes that we have created. Now the first element, let's say I'm going to use right after the first two. Let me create some div element. So these are like doc elements, and then we will define some color and borders so that we can use this. So let me create a class called static, class called static, and then I will you know, make use of this. So under that, let me remove these two now. Let me put up you know, div dot uh, static, and then and that, let me put the position. I'm going to say static, and let's put up some border with 3 pixels and solid with the color I'm going to define. This is the color that I have used in the slides as well. Right. So let's see how it shows you. Maybe I will put some content within this block so that this is, let's say this is static static div element. Right, let me save, let me refresh it. Okay, so you see how it works. Now the next one that I'm going to use is another div element, but when we say relative, so when we say relative means based on its normal position, we can use different values and then we can put it. So let me create another div element. So this time I'm going to say div class relative, and then let me say this is relative div element. Let me say slash div. Right. So let me create div relative. So I'm going to use position relative. And then when I say position relative, now I can use the positioning values. Remember, I told you earlier that you can use top, bottom, left, and right. So just we'll make it to left, 30 pixels. And let me use the same border color. Let me copy from here. So let me save, let me refresh it. So you can see now the block element is shifted. So originally, if I without static element, it should start from here. Now the left side, now you have some pixels. Right, now let me use another relative just to show you the difference. Let me copy this, the next one as relative 1. Right. And then let me just copy the same. Just I'm going to say relative 1. Let's say I'm going to put top. And let me save. So if I refresh now, you can see how it happens. So you can see from the top, from the original position. So it have 30 pixels. So, and that's how it looks. Let me use another relative to say right. Okay, I'm going to have relative 2. And then let's say I'm going to say right. And then I will copy paste the same thing. And simply I will say relative 2. And here is how it looks. So it's actually overlapping because you see it's go down from where originally we have. So that's the reason why we got it. So if you want, you can actually keep one of them. But you see now positioning that now is relative. Static is usually how you position it, and you cannot, change or use any other property to change the location. But now you see when you put up relative, you can change its position. The next one that I'm going to show you is when you say fixed, what will happen? So the right now you can see when you're scrolling, nothing is changed. So you can see it's changing. So let's have another div element, right? Sorry, another div element. So I'm going to say this is fixed. I'm going to change the text here. This is fixed element. And then I'm going to say here it says fixed, right? Let me save it. And now I'm going into the top. So let me say div fixed. Now, when you say fixed, it's fixed. So the first thing is position is fixed. Then you can decide the pixels. So I'm going to say bottom 0, no spacing, right, again 0, and the width, I'm going to say 300 pixels. I'm going to use the same border like in previous case. So let's copy paste. Right, let me save, let me refresh. And here is how it look like. And so you see that it's now fixed element, even you browse, it won't change. So the position we have set the bottom and the right, and then we specify the width. So now it's actually fixed. When you even scroll, you see that it's in the same position. So sometimes you will see in website, there are some elements we make it fixed like this. Right. Um, Now, when you have two elements, one another, right? We can talk about relative positioning. We can specify width and height, especially from the original position. Then we can specify element within this so that we can make it positioning depend on how you actually specify the size. Right, but to explain that, I just want you to finish. Can you please indicate whether you have finished up to this point? Right. So let me explain what we have done here. So here we have two. I'm explaining absolute div element. Now to explain that, I created a relative 3 div element, and then I put up the values as it's relative 400 pixels and 200 pixels. So which draws this one. Then within that, I will put another div element which is absolute with the absolute positioning. So when you say absolute positioning, we can say where we want to keep it. So we said, okay, so it's starting from the top, we have 80 pixels. The right hand side, we have 0. And width will be half of the previous one. Earlier it was 400, now this is 200, and here this is 200, and this is 100, half of that. And you see how the positioning is. Now, once you get actually master this one, I think now you should be able to, arrange the pages the way you want, right? So we discussed the positioning, uh, which is the basically what we need to, understand. Right. Okay. Now, to discuss our uh, discussion to end, I would like to discuss how the website layouts are. And with that discussion, I would like to conclude our CSS discussion. But before that, let's wait until you finish up to this point. Now, as the last part of this, I would like to discuss about how we can, handle website layout. So under that, mainly I would like to discuss how we, order the layouts in our website. Now, if you look at how the website layouts are used in HTML4 and HTML5. The mainly HTML4 we use div elements and with different IDs to specify different parts of the website. But things have changed from HTML5 with the introduction of separate tags for each of these. So let's start with a small exercise where we will try to build a simple web application with this, different layout. Okay, let's start. So I'm going back to the code. Let me use a new one. Under that, what I'm trying to do is I'm going to create a website which creates simple web interface like this, right? Okay, so let's go back. So in this one, let me take our previous code. So we don't have to start from the beginning. So I'm going to use copy paste the same, and I will share what we have right now. So I'm going to use this. And then within that, what I'm actually trying to do is, let me first right. So what we are going to do is, let's create with the default environment where we can talk about different parts, right? So for example, here, in our example, I'm going to remove all header information, style attributes. We can start from the beginning. And then we will start from, I will remove this one as well. Let me put this in H1 so we can start from here, right? So I'm going to say this is Black Goose Bistro, and I will put it in the title. Right. Let me save this. This I'm going to use it as CSS 6. Right. I'm going to save it. Let me share you the code so that you can work with the same code with me. Right. So here is what I have right now. So let me open up. So here is what I have, right? I hope everything is clear to you. Right. Now let me change part of this. Now this is my body. Let me introduce the structure. Let me assume that this is my header. So I'm going to include header here. And then I will // header. Right? So we have header structure. It's about this. And then let's have some what we call menu. So let's put some menu items. In my case, let me put its navigation now, and we will end up with now as well. And within this, what I'm going to have unordered list. And within that, I can have some list items. So let's say home. I will say /li. We can have menu li/li. Another one we'll say contact us. Right. So I put a menu item as well. So the next one that I'm going to put is I will create a section. So under the section, I'm going to use the paragraph. So the idea is I'm going to put this as a section, and then I will end up here slash section, right? So that part will be the main section. Then we can make it, these are like items or maybe some articles. So under this, I will say these two, I will put different articles. So let me say this is article. This is one, and this is another one, slash article. Similarly, here also we have article. The next one also, I will put it as slash article. Right. So nothing you really see now because we have not changed anything. So if you refresh it, so you just say it's typical website, you don't see any changes at all, right? So let me share the whole code in case if you missed anything. Right. Now here is what I'm going to do now. So now I'm going to include my style codes and try to understand what is happening, right? So the first one, let me start with the body section. So the what I'm going to do with the body, I'm going to specify some fonts. So let me say font family. I will say Verdana Sans Serif. Prasanga, in this particular case, I just want to show you like how it is laying out. Of course, in case you can put into footer, right? I didn't put any footer here. Let's say, good that you talk about this location and hours. Yeah, maybe instead of article then, I'll make it a footer then. Footer, right? That was your concern, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, doctor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe we can say footer. So article, you can have another information, you can type it something else. Actually, I have used what is already existing. So that's what has happened. And also like when you have a footer section, you can also sometimes type the copyright information, things like, I will put something and copy, let's say 2023, black use this, so right, and then all rights reserved. Okay, I just add something more and I make it a footer. Okay, sorry, should be. So we have only one article, but you can have many there, huh? Right. Okay, now let's go back. I will, what I did is basically change something. Let me show you what I have done so far. Now I have changed the font. Let's see. Yes, now you can see the font has changed, and I have included more on, of course, yeah, my footer section. Right now, let's make it a change. Let's make header and footer in different colors, for example. Let me change some header and footer both. Um, so header and footer, let's say, right? Let's change the colors. Let's say I'm going to say color is white, and then background color, let's say black. So now see how it look like. So this is the header and this is the footer. So you can see now header and footer, it shows you the way we have. Maybe now what we could do is we can give some padding, right? So you have some spacing. So let's put some padding here. So let's use about like 10 pixels. Yes. Okay. Looks good now. Rather than just put it like that. Yes. Then what about okay. Mm, menu sections. Yes. One thing we want to do about the navigation is we can remove padding in UL, and list items we can say we don't have to go one after the other. It's block li item, it goes to the second line. You see here that I can make it to inline. So let's do that part. Right, so I'm going to do a couple of things. First one, navigation. Unordered list, I'm going to say padding. I will change the padding value to 0. So now when you say padding is to 0, see what will happen now. So what happens? No spacing here, right? It comes here, right? Down to the end, no spaces. And the next one, what we would like to do is this list item. Right now they are block items, so that's why it goes to the next line, right? So we say nav, UL, and li. What I'm going to do here is, okay, so the first thing that we want to say, okay, display, which we have discussed early, should be inline, isn't it? So now let's see what will happen when you refresh it. Okay, now you will have, see, it looks like a menu, but we can have more spacing. So we can put up some margin here. So let's put up some margin. So let's put 5 pixels. So now let's refresh it. Margin spellings. Yes, now you can see there are spacing. It looks good now. Now let's change the sectioning. We have put up a section. Let's give a different color so that it will highlight. So what we need to do is let's change the background color. Okay, so let's say a margin, section. In section, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to change the background color. Background color. Let's use light gray, and let's refresh it. Okay, now you can see the section, you see it in light and gray color. That's the section. But you can put up some margin and some padding so that it looks good. So let's put up some. So this is the section. Let's put up some values. Margin, I'm going to use 5 pixels. You see what happened? Yes. So now you can see around that you have margin. One thing I would like to do is, I think in the code, yeah, section is within the footer. I'm going to make it a change there. So I better put it here. Now let me refresh. Okay, now you can see the difference. Earlier, the section include the footer as well. So I put up a margin around this section. Let's put up some padding as well. Padding, let's put 10 pixels. You see how it look like now? Looks way better than when we start. Right. Now let's highlight. This is the section and you can have several articles. Let's highlight the article in different color. So what I'm going to do is I will use article and let's change the background color. So I'm going to say, okay, background color back to white. So what has happened now? Now this is the section. Within the section, we have the article. When you refresh it, now you can see it's show you now it's highlighted. You can have multiple articles in this particular case. So what you could do is let's give some spacing. We'll specify margin and padding, maybe same values as the section. I will copy from there. So let's put it here. So let's save it, refresh it. Okay, now looks good. Now you can see the spacing will, indicate the article and you have a different color. Of course, you can have multiple articles. Let me just copy paste the same article again, just to show you like what will happen when we have multiple articles. So when you save it and you refresh it, you see it'll look like this when you have multiple articles. Right now, I just copy paste the same. Okay, of course, in case if you want to change the font size, well, of course, maybe footer. Let me change footer only. So, of course, we can say footer. You can change the font size. Font size. Now, if you want to resize relative the uh, existing site, we can use EM, that is about the font sizes. So let's change into, let's say, 0.9 EM so that footer font sizes are a little bit smaller. Yes, maybe 0.7. Yes, I'm checking. Okay, much better, yes. Right? So you can see we have changed the font size a little bit smaller so that the footer normally we will use that some information that a person wants to contact you. So by reducing the size, you can see it'll give you a different flavor to the footer. Okay, so I think that's all I have for CSS, and I hope we discuss all the details that necessary you to come up with your own website or a web. Even for what we plan is actually web application. So you can actually use this. Right. So let me share you the style codes first. So let me share that so that you can double check whether you are able to use the way I want to formulate this. Right. If you have finished up to this point, please let me know. Right. Now, here is the example that I would like to discuss, and then we have done with the small exercise and try to understand how the CSS website layout could be used to create your own, website. Right. To conclude, I have a couple of slides about CSS units. Now, usually when you specify units, you can use centimeters, millimeters, inches. These are absolute values. Of course, we normally use pixels. Um, of course, if you want to use, or you can use even in points and picas as well. Relative length, EM, relative the font size of the element. I told you like when we use a footer element, we set the size to 0.7. That means relative to the font size, we will use 70% of the size. So for example, 2em means 2 times the size of the current fonts. That's how it used. Similarly, there are other elements as well, but most commonly used one is EM unit. Right. So with that, we will conclude the CSS part. Right. So let's go back to a new topic. So let's have a 5 minutes break. And after the break, I will start with JavaScript. As our next part, we are going to talk about another important technology under the web technologies, that is the JavaScript language. You see, as a language also, this is quite popular. And then also another sort of skill, especially if you are working in that industry. So knowing JavaScript is also very important. And especially when you want to create applications, you know that there are single page applications are there, web applications using HTML and CSS JavaScript. So you can actually use them. So usually we say JavaScript is a high-level scripting language which used in on the web, and usually we can enhance the interactivity of the pages we develop. Basically, JavaScript is an interpreted language, and that is one of the 3 core technologies of the World Wide Web. So what are the features? In brief, we can say JavaScript can be used to react to the events, and you can also have special effects. You can accept variables, text, and then you can validate, especially in form filling. Before you submit your form, you can check whether whatever users have entered, whether they are valid or not. You can create cookies, or you can detect what users' browsers are, which is very helpful. So here are some graphical elements that you will see. For example, especially we can have some rules, especially to validate what users are entering in the system, because it's very important before you save. So when you have, for example, set of rules, at the same time, when users are entering the information, you can update those. Then, for example, the right-hand side, what you see is there are a couple of sections, and it's collapsible, which means now currently we are looking at section 2. and information is available. Third, especially you may have noticed that when you type something in Google search, you see whatever you type, it'll guess and give you some suggestions. Again, that can be used, that can be done with the use of JavaScript. Now let's look at how to add JavaScript to the page. In JavaScript, especially when you want to have the code within the document, we can use script element. And within the script element, you can type JavaScript code. Or else the other one is you can use it as an external script, which is when you say script and then we can refer it as a Java script file. Now, the advantage of use of this as external script is you can apply the same set of functionality with the other pages as well. But there are some disadvantages as well. You need to have HTTP requests of the server, which basically slow down the performance. Right. Now, script element can be go anywhere in the document, but you will normally see in two places, head of the document and then body of the document, right? So these are the places that we can normally see. Depend on your requirement, you may put it into a head or a body. So let's start with the basics in JavaScript. It's case sensitive, especially when you're using like, variables. Make sure that you focus on the cases. So for example, my variable can be written in three different ways, you can see. And if you use it in these three different ways, it will treat it as a three different objects. So make sure that, from the beginning, the use of your variable names and also the commands. Now, statements, for example, usually when you have JavaScript statement, could be some values, could be some expression, and could be even a function like alert, thank you. Now you see that when you have a statement, alert, what happens, it can be used to display some message which says thank you. And this semicolon is very important. Any statement should end with a semicolon. Third one, comments. Comments can be done in multiple ways in JavaScript. You can use two slashes, or you can use slash and asterisk, which is multi-line comment. Okay, let's talk about the variables in JavaScript. Again, we can manipulate, we can perform calculations with JavaScript. So variables are important for us to keep the information. Right, now when you want to create a variable, usually we will use the keyword var, and then you have a variable name and you assign a value. So when you're naming, you have to follow the following rules. It should start with the letter or underscore, and then you can have letters, digits, and underscores. You cannot have spaces. You cannot have any other special characters. Keep in mind that what is valid in variable names. The second one is when we want to store data, you should know the data type as well. So the data type can be many things, and then it depends on how you define your variables. Now, for example, if you just say foo is the name of the variable, we define this without any value. But of course, let's look at null. If you want to specify variable, let's say you don't have any value here, so you can say foo equals null. which is we can use to define define a variable. Then when you want to have numbers, you can just simply assign var for 5, or then you can say alert 4 plus 4. This will be how you handle the numbers. Okay, next about the string values. For example, you can use either single quotes or double quotes, which indicates the string value. And you know why we have two ways of representing, because it should cover everything. Right? So here are some string values which we have. The first one we have var for 5, and then you just add them. But remember that here we have the foo is a string value, isn't it? So when you say string plus string, so you will get 5. Similar here var for 5, but you see the 5 is not a number. Again, you have double quotes, which indicates that it's a string value. So when you say string value, when you're trying to add, it will concatenate. So 5 and 5, it becomes 55. Similarly, if you have 5 and 5 into different variables, and if you just adapt them, you can say 5, 5. The next one is Boolean variables. When you talk about the Boolean variables, we can assign the variable true or false. For example, here we say foo is true. So the variable foo is now true. Next, we have arrays. When you talk about the arrays, again, very important when you want to store multiple values under a single name. So you can see here foo within list of items, you will see it's a mixed data type. But this is indexed. That means based on the location, we should be able to access the element. So for example, when you say alert foo 0, which indicates the first element, that is 5. And when you say foo 1, that is the second element, which is alert 5. Third one, foo 2, is 5 again. So here are some of the array methods is possible, which I think we need to figure this out by doing some exercises on this. Right. The next one is arithmetic operators. We have addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, modulus, increment numbers, decrement numbers, and then adds the value to itself. Similarly, you can have comparison operators as well. We can check one value is whether is equal to another value, with the value is not equal to some, is identical, is not identical, and so on. Okay, when you talk about the comparison operators, you will see that we can use comparison operators, and depend on that, outcome will be either true or false. Okay, so under this, I just want to highlight one thing. Now here you can see alert. We check whether 5 is equal to 5. Of course, right? Because they are two numbers, and then you will get true. The second one is we say 5 not equal 6. This will alert true because 5 is not equal to 6. Third one, you have alert 5 less than 1. Basically, it will alert false. The next one, we have alert 5 equals 5. This will alert true, but you see there are two different data types. But if you use 3 equal signs, it will check both the values as well as data types. Because the data types are different, this time we get false statement. And finally, alert 5 not equal 5, which is true, which is not the same data type. Okay, so I want to finish up to this point, because what is left is control structures in JavaScript, which I want to discuss in more detail with the examples. So for today's session, what we covered is CSS last part, which we discussed how we can create a website structure we have discussed, and the basics of JavaScript. Okay, then let's finish for today, and then we'll continue our discussion from next week.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank